In this section, we're going to talk about the membership plugins, and the first one that we want to talk about is import and export users and or customers. This is a very helpful plugin when you're launching a WordPress website and you already have an established set of either users or customers or folks that you want to basically make part of your WordPress website. And rather than go into users and start to add a new user one by one, it can get very, very tedious very quickly. And if you're not a database expert in WordPress, then this adding this in SQL, which is the database behind the scenes, is going to be daunting to those of you that don't even know what the word SQL or acronym SQL means. So the next best thing for the rest of you is going to be this plugin that we've included, and it's called Import and Export Users and Customers. So if you're not doing anything with membership, you can safely just go ahead and delete this plugin because you're not going to need it. However, let's go ahead and activate it and use the assumption that you're going to use it or you would like to use it. So now that we have it activated, the question may be, where is it? Because it doesn't give you any help or text at the top of where this is, and since there's really nothing down here about documentation, I mean, you can click view details, right? And that's fine. And maybe if you go over to the installation, it will tell you, kind of where all this stuff is. But nonetheless, I'll tell you exactly where it's at. It's buried under Tools and under Import and Export Users and Customers. Inside of that single link, you have a series of tabs along the top and a whole plethora of information on each one of the tabs. I'm not going to go over this extensively, but I am going to again give you enough information to get you moving, to get you started. So the first thing that you're going to need to do is to import your users in a comma-separated value file. That's what CSV stands for, if you didn't already know that. And the best way to get started with this is to have a template. Now, you can get a template example by coming over here to this documentation tab. And if you scroll to the bottom, you'll see this example. And over here, you can download this CSV file. And if you go ahead and open it, you'll have all of the columns that you could possibly want for billing email, last name, role, display name, username, stuff like that, right? And so you can just fill in, copy and paste, or create a spreadsheet or a CSV file with all of the information that you want, and now you'll have this great example. Matter of fact, I'm just going to leave what was in the test file, and we're going to come over here to import, and I'm going to choose import. And before I do that, let's go over here to users so that we can take a look. Right now, it's the DW admin. That's the only thing in here. So we go back to Tools, User Import Export. I'm going to choose that test file that I just downloaded. And there it is. And all of that looks good. Now, when you go to import your users, you're going to need to pick what role they want. Now, this default role, the roles that you're seeing here are the default WordPress roles. You can create additional roles, and they also have this other plugin for a role editor. So you might want to download and explore that if you're doing stuff largely with roles. In any event, most of you are just going to choose the default, which is a subscriber, and we'll go ahead and we'll leave it at that. Now, if you go through each one of these, you're going to need to read and try to understand each one of these, and we're going to go through that here because this is essential to the basic usage of the plugin. All right, so options. What should the plugin do with empty cells? And at this point, you just leave the old value for the metadata. So if there's whatever's there, just leave whatever the default value is going to be. Now you have the opportunity to send an email to the users in the list with their credentials, and I usually would suggest to do this unless you don't want to have people know what their username and password is, or you want to handle it manually, or maybe you just want to send them a personalized email. But this is probably the most efficient way, especially if you're doing hundreds or tens and tens of users or thousands of users. You may want to do this. That way they get their credentials and you're not having to send them information. Okay, so with that being said, now you would go ahead and check that, but because I've downloaded the sample file, I'm going to uncheck it, but you should probably check it. All right, and then it says, do you want to send an email also to the users that are being updated? Okay, so what this is if you have existing users in the system and you're running this import and you're importing users that are already in the list, it's saying, do I want to send an email to those users? And essentially there's other options about overriding existing users, and here we go, update existing users. It says yes. Chances are you're probably not going to want to do this. I don't know why this is default, because typically you don't want to import twice and override data. Overriding data is usually, when you're in data, computer jobs that have data, you usually want to do data integrity or protection. So overriding is typically a bad default option. So make sure you uncheck this from yes to no, or select it rather from yes to no. That should work in most cases. Now, if you have a specific reason to do that, then by all means, go ahead and just leave it as the default yes. And then here's another thing. Do you want to update the role for the existing users? Now, that I could understand you might want to do that, unless, of course, you're making a potential mistake. Okay, and now you have a couple of options that you want to update and override existing roles, or you want to add new roles and not override the existing ones. So lots of options there. And then here you go, users that are not present in the CSV file. This is a fantastic option because this allows you to do everything essentially in one fell swoop. Essentially, you may have a backup, an old legacy backup, but you, for whatever reason, had a copy of all of the current users. Maybe that all of the users are coming from a data system, another data system outside of WordPress, and you're restoring, say, an old copy of WordPress that has the old users. And in this case, you just want to import the new users, and anybody that's in the system that's not in the list that you're importing, you can go ahead and select this and it'll clean up after itself and delete all of those old users. So that's why we chose this plugin. It's free and it's very powerful and very, very, very helpful. And of course you can change the role of users that are administrator, not present in the CSV. So these are all of the basic options. I'm not going to go through the rest of this, but the main documents, the main tabs that you should focus on are going to be the documentation folder. Please go ahead and read through each and every one of these. This mail options is also another great tab to explore. This is how automatic emails would go out. And then, of course, your export. Maybe you want to export users, and then, of course, we just showed you the import. So that's it for this video. We'll see you in the next one where we're going to talk about content control and member areas.